And then just go from there. And if you make mistakes or whatever, I can always record out, and I'll try to get I'll just get 40 minutes of it. So
Well, I'd like to know what's your angle? What's the deal with you?
okay.
Are you because you're a white guy living in America,
Yeah.
uh, and I am actually you're the majority in a superpower, and I'm pretty much a minority in a pretty much Asian country.
Yeah, in
Although
Australia, right? Or is it?
yeah, a lot of it isn't. I guess there might be more, I guess, white people here, but our economy and our politics and everything is driven by Asia. So we do have freedom of speech here, but if you were to say the wrong thing, there would be a huge backlash. So your freedom of speech is protected far greater than mine. Let's just put it that way.
I see.
But why are you doing it? Why are you creating the content? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Well, I guess I'll do a little introduction here. Been going by the internet name pilleater since 2009. Originally, the name was kind of a jokey name, and I made internet content on old websites like You're the Man Now Dog or YTMD.com, and it pretty much was a part of that internet scene when I was like 16, 17. But as I developed and going to art school and doing a bunch of other things like Asian studies, I decided to, I guess, resurrect the name Pilleater because it's pretty much my only internet name. And this project really began in November of 2016. And
Yeah.
originally, I come as a background as an artist, and I've always been interested in some scenes on the internet, such as, with the whole, we're now seeing, especially in the American scene, that we now have a huge anti-SJW whole, you want to call it quote unquote red pill. Now the media.
SJW. I had to have a look at it. It's Social Justice
There's a whole,
Warrior.
yep, yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, you don't
So
want to, because it's basically been a problem a lot in some of the. It's pretty much a long story, but the point is that the American scene has pretty much became anti-liberal and very skeptical of the modern world, and it's a youth thing as well, and so there's been a lot of trolling from 4chan and a lot of anger against the establishment, and so odd movements like the alt-right, which has now exploded since the Charlottesville event a few months back, have now basically, there's this political civil war, and people now are saying, like, are you on the left wing or right wing or something like that. I think of myself as an avant-garde artist, and originally I started a project calling it One Night with a Friend Asian Aryanism as kind of a joke
can I
because
I don't know what your audience knows about this stuff, but I I would like to know why people identify as left or right or whatever they identify, and why they identify themselves that way. I would like to know that
um,
because I think each situation is different, and the world is far more grey than I think a lot of people give it credit for, and being left or right or whatever affiliation you like to have, that should be fluid. Just in my opinion, I
oh
like
yeah.
to be able to change my mind depending on the situation because I don't think voting one way. Why do you think people do that?
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that because people have already called me some kind of new kind of leftist. Even the term alt-leftist. I've actually written an article about that and say, am I a part of the alt-left now? It just seems to be, like you said, it should be fluid, and if any healthy society, left-wing, right-wing, should be just only journalist terminologies and just things people naturally gravitate to, but it's fortunately became, I think, split, and you're either red guy or blue guy. But I think the audience, actually, I think my audience is pretty apolitical. I just think they're just pretty much edgy people who come from, I guess, I mean, there are some people who identify as the alt-right who are fans of my work, and there's also some people who don't like the alt-right and they just want to be left alone. They just don't like SJWs, and they find my work fascinating. So I think politics is very important, but it's also a very powerful thing that has basically oppressed a lot of art. And depending how you address the issue, you can express your ways in certain self. But I do believe it's definitely a strong motivation, and especially my project, flirting with some political backgrounds to tease people or at least troll people. You get very interesting dynamics there. So personally, politically, I've read a lot on both left-wing, right-wing sides, and I think what I can agree with is probably the reactionary position. Again, the whole anti-liberal thing. Not to sound that I'm a pessimist, but I really do believe that there will be a future that is not like today that we're in, and maybe things can be better, pretty much.
Well, I will give you one thing. You are extremely articulate. You could be a politician. The way you speak it's amazing. Actually, you have a way with words. I'm a deep thinker, although I'm a terrible speaker. Let's just put it that way. But some of the jargon that you use, sometimes it goes over my head. It's like the speech that like you'd make a great CEO. It's almost like you're trying to say something and I don't quite grasp it, so you can almost say anything. Sorry, that's my phone. I will hang that one up. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's almost like business speak. Business speak where like the CEO gets up on TV and they're trying to tell people, yeah, we're gonna fire 1,000 people, but they say it like, oh, we're going to optimize.
Yeah,
and we're
pretty
going
much.
To
Yeah, I mean that's this nice way of putting it, but
I'd dumb it down a little bit for me, because but yeah, so okay, I kind of get the gist of where you're going, kind of.
Well, I was actually introduced from your videos from a friend who I have to thank, DJ, because he's been looking at your stuff, and I soon followed your stuff as well. And looking at it, you have very interesting videos, especially about the Asian environment in Australia and around, and people talking about such issues. And I think that's a really good thing. Especially, I mean, you have so many subscribers. I can't believe I only found out you out within like 3 days or 72 hours. I just don't. It's that one little thing that there's so much going around. I can't keep up with, and I can't believe. Yeah. But I think similarly we have the similar interest, but I guess I put it in a different way, in more of an artistic way, and you're more.
You're in a far more free space. So if I have anything to say, I would love to be able to speak to you, as my rights are slowly being taken away from me in Australia. And there is a caveat there. I would like to say that a lot of my videos, they aren't all my ideas. My titles are often stolen from Asian videos, like Asian YouTube channels. And what I do is I reverse the video. So, but I do it in a far more PG, politically correct way, to try to avoid getting in trouble. Whereas the Asian guys are doing this to white people in Australia, they can do it far more aggressively and get away with it and get the praise and be treated like heroes. I have to be careful what I do. So I can go through categorically almost all of my videos, and I can identify videos from Asian channels doing worse, like over exaggerated to an extent, reversed these videos on my channel.
I mean, just for an introduction, for I guess some people listen to my podcast and they don't know what's going on, but what topics do you cover in your YouTube videos, and what was some of your YouTube videos that got you a lot of subscribers or got you interested, people having invested within your stuff?
Um, I started out with AMWF. So what I would do is I would go out and interview AMWF. That is a female. That's I guess the Asian men around the world, especially in America, they feel like they've been left behind in this dating pool. They feel like there's a lot more um, white men and Asian females instead of Asian men and white females. But in fact, AMWF, there's a lot of Asian men, white females in Australia. It's a different society. And so what I would do is I do the interview style and interview white women and ask them, are you attracted to Asian men, in a positive manner, and try to give Asian men confidence. A lot of these videos were actually copied from other channels. And I thought, as a white guy, it would be far more authentic. Although there's still a camera there, it would be far more authentic if a white guy asked a white girl than an Asian guy going over and saying, hey, do you like me? No pressure. The world's watching you, and we know that you're a racist if you say no. So so I went out and made the most authentic channel in the world, and I'm pretty sure I'm still the only white guy that's ever done that. So that's what I built it on, and I got a lot of hatred. I got a bit of love as well, but I still got a lot of hatred in comparison to the Asian guys that would do the same videos.
Yeah, I find that there is definitely a interest in biculturalism during this at least in the past decades, that in the globalized world there are multiple, you might hear the word multiculturalism or diversity, but I find that this term is a little too vague, and that people draw boundaries, and especially in any Asian American community, you will find two bicultural groups, whites and Asians, getting together, and that is through Asian male white female, or white male Asian female. However, it's weird because the liberal narrative, as I was saying before, in America tends to think everything's multicultural, that there's more than two races, there's three races. You could be Afro-Asian marrying a Jewish Hispanic person, right? Which is crazy. It doesn't happen at all. It's just but they try to evaluate it in media and press, and really I think that people have drawn lines to create bicultural interest. Now, I'm a little worried, and I've been unfortunate that being a part of kind of that bicultural Asian American community, I find that there seems to be that the liberal society just hates white people. They hate white men. They hate white cisgendered men, and so they want an equation without white men. So when we talk about white male Asian female, you think it would be praised as being something unique and different and beautiful to the quote-unquote multicultural world, but really multiculturalism is about getting rid of white people, and they don't like that because they think white men inherently are racist. And so I said this in a previous video, that I said that Asian male white female would be more praised is because there's no white male in the equation. However, that shouldn't stop the ideal that there should be biculturalism, that it is actually good to have Asian male white female and white male Asian female because of that bond. But yeah.
Can I stop you right there? Yeah, I after realizing that I was getting hate I was getting a small majority of hate and not quite getting the traffic that I felt that I deserved in comparison to other channels which had Asians on there, and I felt that that was due to me just being white. So I was being discriminated against in the YouTube community because I was white. And so I'm like, I got a bit frustrated and I'm like, screw it. I'm going to go and ask Asians if they're attracted to white guys and flip the switch and see what happened. And if you look at my channel, that video got nothing but hate, dirty white men. These Asian women are race traitors. They just the abuse and the hate towards white men just spewed out for I don't know how many comments throughout that video. Yet when I go and do Asian man, white female video, AMWF, which I've done a vast majority more of those videos, the majority of it was love and this is good for society, this is great. Every now and then there would be a comment like fuck you white guy, but then there would so the total contrast when you look at them, and that my entire channel I think is what you've been searching for, because my channel is not a YouTube channel, it's actually an experiment. So if you go through, my YouTube channel is an experiment.
Yeah, I find this quite bad if there's that reaction, because if we're talking about biculturalism, it means two groups of people of two different races have to work with one another. And if it means in the equation that the white woman equivalent of the white man is okay with an Asian man, but it's not okay for the white man to have an Asian woman, girlfriend, even though they're larger in numbers, it's bad. And I just think that's it's toxic in a way. So
if you go through my comments, you will see that they explicitly say over and over again in the comments that white man, Asian female produces less intelligent kids. They're lazy, they're stupid, they'll have defects. Yet Asian man, white female children are intelligent. They're just better for society in general. And I gotta say, you got to understand that I'm living in a total different environment than you. You really need to understand that. Like really need to understand. I also live in a suburb which is literally 90% Asian. It is majority Chinese and Korean. And people don't talk to me in the street. I get served poorly when I enter shops. I've been abused and attacked in the street, I think only because of the color of my skin. I get discriminated against by Australian-owned banks that are run by Asian people. The discrimination goes on and on and on. And this isn't just something that you've just tapped into that is small. It is vastly larger than I think that even you're aware of.
I think so, because there's a lot in the internet world, or the metapolitical world, where politics and thought is on the internet, but doesn't correlate with the extroverted reality, as you're in an environment where it's bad to be as a white guy in a whole Asian environment.
And to an extent, I think the Asian guys in America feel that they are the most discriminated against. And I got to say, some of the most disgusting racist comments attacking me have come from America. And I've got thousands of comments. Like if you look at it, I've got 400 and something comments in my thing on my YouTube channel right now, 419. And I don't even open them up sometimes because it just depress me. If you go through and you read this over and over again, you would start getting depressed. So I just don't even look at it sometimes. Couple of days later, I just won't even do it. The Asian men, this is something I don't know whether you're aware of it. The Asian men that are living in America, they have the most they have such a victim mentality that and they also have the free speech within America, and they also have access to social media. So part of the problem living in Australia is the Asian men living in Australia, they are living vicariously through the eyes of an Asian American, although they're not actually living in the present and looking what's outside their front door.
Yeah,
If I can,
it's
if I
no,
can explain that, if I
yeah.
can explain, they are the majority. They are the majority. The amount of times I've gone out and I'd have an Asian guy introduce me to his friends, go, "Oh, this is the only white friend I have," ha 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 ha, and I'm like in an Asian community most of the time. And if you go through to the major cities, I am the minority. Yet the Asians living here, they still have this feeling that they're being discriminated against and that they're beaten down Asian men and that they're being treated poorly, even though most of their friends might be dating white girls and they have more freedom than I do in this country. And the reason that is because the propaganda, I call it propaganda from the Asian men living in America that like I guess if you're an Asian guy living in a white community, you'd feel the same way I do. So I guess when I started making mine, I felt like, hey, I know how you feel to be the minority, um, and I felt that there would be some sort of kinship. But actually, a lot of the hate has come from Asian Americans, and also I've reached out to almost every Asian YouTuber out there. I've reached out to almost all of them. They won't touch me with a bar of soap.
I feel that it's unfortunate because there's hardly written anything about, again, the bicultural relationship between whites and Asians. Yet it happens. It's there. It's just that everyone's afraid to talk about it, and when you do, you get
Oh
shot
yeah.
down. It's
Oh,
just.
dude, I would love to talk about this stuff, and I'd love. The thing is, I just
Hmm.
I feel that already at this stage, I may, after I have my next hip replacement, I need a hip replacement, by the way. Um, I feel that I might be unemployable within Australia because I'm white and I've actually talked about these issues already. And I actually believe that. And in fact, I've already gone out and filmed some secret videos of me asking for jobs and being told that they don't hire white people.
Uh, well, again, there's the natural racial consciousness of people who like it's self-racial naturalism. People prefer to be people like themselves. But I come from the angle where in the American situation, it's bicultural and Eurasians hiring each other. It's more like if the Asians see a white guy there, he'll hire the white guy, and if there's some Eurasian type of girls, they'll hire Asian or white looking men, and people look out for one another. And in fact, I have good
Really?
friends. I have good friends who
Wow.
are basically white male, Asian male, white female from both sides, and they don't have one drop of knowledge of this internet warfare that goes on. So
Wow.
it's but here's the thing, it's socioeconomically higher. I'm in Philadelphia, so on the campus of University Penn, one of the most highest academic colleges in America, of course everybody is Asian and white, and they all look
But
out
is
for
it
one another. They just are not.
okay?
What's that?
Okay, it's a higher socioeconomic status area, but is it majority white?
It's majority both white and Asian. It's pretty much all Asian when you walk on campus of UPenn. It basically, there's three colleges in Philadelphia area. Temple, all the lower class people from blacks to whites go to Temple. Then Drexel, the normal middle class whites or whatever go to normal jobs, and then Penn, it's elite for Asians and other eccentric whites and Eurasians. And
But are the majority of them born in America?
some of them are, but you also have this mix of Japanese coming in and some, both fresh off the boat. And again, there is this large number of Eurasian people or Hapa people that are coming in from this millennial generation that come from the normal white male, Asian female, or Asian, or even Asian male, white female background. And everyone seems to get along on that. And again, these environments are in every major metro, city, not only Philadelphia, but classically New York and then in California. It's East Coast and West Coast thing. It's a pretty much interesting phenomenon that's going on, has deep roots in hipster culture and the eccentric arts, and nobody wants to point it out. And now it's probably different in Australia, as you say, you're discriminated, but in America, it's kind of turned into this whole, I guess you want to call it punk culture, because we were just talking about the genetics argument. It's ironic they shame white men, but they'll go as far to say that, well, Asian male, white female produce better genetic children than white male, Asian female, because Wamoffle just produces Elliot Rogers. It's odd. It's odd because it's again this weird, bizarre. Because I would assume that from my own observations, they both produce the same type of child. It's just the patriarchy that rules over it. It's arguing that an Asian patriarchy would discipline a kid, when unfortunately a cucked, liberal-minded white person who doesn't want to have a manifestation in his children or a destiny, they have it's bad parenting, and that's not that it's a reason why, but I think genetically it produces the same kids, and in fact, I wouldn't even use the genetic argument. I would say that.
Okay, before you go too far, you brought up so many subjects.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a lot of people who are born in America, so they'll be half Asian or just pure Asian. These people are totally cool in Australia. They're totally cool because they're brought up in this area, and unless they have two Asian parents that were extremely racist, and then they have like this type of feeling, but people born here are totally different from people coming here. And I gotta say, I think it's almost the percentages, 50% almost, or 40% or something of most of the cities, the major cities like Sydney and Melbourne, were not born in that city.
Yeah, that's a lot of it's coming from off seas.
Yeah, so I'm living in a total different environment to you. I'm not living in people who are born here. It's happened so fast, the immigration, that the cultures have changed too. I can't find anything Australian in Australia anymore, and not that that's a bad thing, but I can't actually. There's two different environments. You see, you are a product of the environment you grew up in, and that's the way I have come to learn about the differences here. So if you're Australian born, you kind of grow up in this environment, and I notice the difference between a child who is probably 10 years old that is born in Australia and is used to seeing white people. They're like, oh, hello, and they will talk to me. But an Asian child who is 10 years old who was not born here, they will actually give me a bad look, like I am the devil. And that is very evident a lot of the times around here. So I'm living in an environment where the people were born overseas, and their culture is different. They come from areas where they're not used to seeing white people or any sort of multiculturalism. And then when they come here, they're a little bit more skeptical. And a lot of this isn't because the hatred isn't because it's something new or anything like that. It's fear. Now, hatred comes from fear. So often, if you're in a situation where you are scared, you are more likely to attack first. So, so there's a lot of fear and mistrust, and that usually goes against the people who were born here, and especially white or black people who are here as well.
A lot of the globalized countries, basically, instead of that they say they're supporting multiculturalism, when it really just means creating a host country within a country. So, for example, like Vancouver, in Canada, all the wealthy Chinese go to Vancouver and pretty much kicked out the native Chinese and made it Little China in Canada, Vancouver. And there's even been this one reality show in China called like Rich Chinese Girls or something. And it's just Chinese girls in Vancouver buying Western white things and trying to get with expensive alpha millionaire boyfriends if they can afford it. But it pretty much, like you said, they pretty much turned Australia into a wax museum. So they could just go there to relocate a second country, then assimilate with the people. It should be the self-determination of the Australians to determine that value, but because things are so, you might want to call it cucked or globalized, they don't have, So I guess what happens in the American situation, what happens is they just race mix and then they do their own little thing. And basically there is this kind of Eurasian elite in America, or this hipster Eurasian group that wants to do its own thing, that has no ties to any of the Northeast countries and just American, but it's kind of this strange, it's hip, and it's a way to get away from all the mess that's happening now, and it's pretty much an accidental race in the creation. What I think it has a result of biculturalism, really. So
that's actually good. I like the way that you guys do it over there, but in fact, over here, I have been brought up to believe that I am racist by default, simply because I'm white, and simply because I'm male, and simply because I'm Australian. And subconsciously, my whole life, I have been told that. Now, this is the propaganda that has often come from immigrants putting up videos that have identified Australians as being racist. Now, if I was to do anything, recently I did a video which was the exact reverse of what a Korean guy did in Australia. Keep in mind, this Korean guy, I think he was born in Australia, but in the video he just calls himself Korean. He grew up here, he's got a law degree, he became a lawyer. Everything that he is as a man today, he can thank Australia, Australia's university, Australia's everything that he can thank for his education and his status in life came from Australia. Yet he started a channel called Asian Boss, which is pretty much the same as me starting up a channel saying white boss or white supremacy. So it's pretty much Asian supremacy in Australia, and they exploded. It's so popular, they went everywhere. They did a video where he interviewed white people in Australia and said, I want to see how stupid these white people are, pretty much, and see if they know anything about Korea. And instead of asking, oh, do you know anything about Korea? He just said, where's Samsung from? Oh, they don't even know that. They're stupid. Pretty much the whole video was to make people look stupid. Well, I did the reverse of that, and I did it far more fair, in a far more fair way, measured way. And I just asked them, what is an Indigenous Australian? What's an Aboriginal? And the vast majority of them, oh yeah, they're the black people that have been here 50,000 years, pretty much. They understood that to an extent. And I said, can you tell us anything about them? Anything at all? And they couldn't answer those questions. I did that as a reverse. In his comments for his video, he got nothing but comments saying, gee, these disgusting white people, they don't know nothing about Asia, they're stupid. It's just thousands of abusing the white people comments, just over and over again. And in mine, instead of saying, oh, look, they don't know anything about Australia, I got death threats. I got even Indigenous Australians saying, we don't need you. I did get a lot of love. I did get a lot of love from Indigenous Australians, but there was a lot of tagging by Asians in the comments, and they would have had their discussions within their WeChat groups, within whatever. So I feel as if I could be in danger just by copying the video in reverse.
That's a really interesting double standard. I mean, it's the typical liberalism that assumes that people are ignorant if they don't know about Korea or something. But the chances are, the truth is, one of my
Oh,
favorite.
also,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but yeah, I need to make the point also. He was asking people in Australia. He was asking people in Australia about Korea. He never asked, "Have you been to Korea? Have you traveled to Korea? Are you living in Korea?" The people that I interviewed had been living in Australia for a minimum of 2 years. I've also got those files. I didn't put that into the video, but I asked them, "How long have you been here? Are you studying here?" And even the ones with the worst amount of English, like the lowest level of English that struggled a little bit, they'd been here a minimum of 2 years and they still didn't know what an Indigenous Australian was. And I didn't hammer them. I didn't try to trick them. It was just an authentic, me being careful type video, knowing that I have to be very careful within Australia as a white man.
It's again, I think one of my favorite books, reading about certain issues about white people is a book called Stuff White People Like by Christian Lander. It was released in 2008. There was also a sequel called Whiter Shades of Pale in 2010. But he has an article about, Asian girls in Japan in the book, and he says that, you see, white people are only interested in different cultures for the materialism and the interests for themselves. They could care less about, what's in Korea. They might even care about anime or something niche, but if you talk too much about it, white people get a little, shocked, and they don't want to. You don't sound like a white person, right? And so what this Korean, guy is doing is he's framing it as a typical liberal, they must be ignorant, right? And so white people fall for that. He's playing a white people game and abusing their trust, and it's an unfortunate thing because it goes to show you that people prefer to be like people with themselves, and there is some kind of racial nationalism. And when you tell, Asian people living in Australia if they care about Australia, they said, no, we're just here for the gives me that, and we just like this country because it's a host country outside the oppressive governments they're in, and so they have relief being paid by whites, so whites treat them as like a Persian cat, and white people like it happy in return. They just want their food. It's like I had one friend tell me that, white people like when they say a restaurant is good or that a restaurant's diverse, it really just means an ethnic restaurant that pretty much supports and likes white people. That's what it means. That's what it is. That's a diverse restaurant is a ethnic
Yeah.
restaurant that allows white people to eat in there, and they bring their white people culture in there. So yeah,
And that actually brings up a point. When I would go to China, I would actually try to get smuggled into the most Chinese of restaurants, even just full of old Chinese where I'm definitely not welcome. I'm not allowed to even be there, just to try and sample what it's like culturally, to get into their minds. And that's what I would do when I would go to China, and I would switch off all English. So um, I'd literally just be not one word of English the entire time I'd go to China, and try to get right deep into the culture as much as I possibly can. There was no tours, there was no hanging with white people or people on holidays or anything. It was just get right down to the nitty gritty and try to understand the people. And that's to an extent reflected in how I see what's happening in Australia. Like, I guess some of my videos, you look at me acting a little bit goofy, but that is a defense mechanism, because if I did this in an educational way, like a lot of the times when you talk on your channel, okay, well, he's intelligent, we can hammer him, he knows what he's doing. But if he acts a little bit goofy and it seems a little bit stupid, therefore we can't really blame him because he's stupid Dave, So a lot of deep thought has gone into a lot of my videos and the way that I present myself, because I understand it a lot more than I think than a lot of people give me credit for, and that's what keeps me safe.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's weird because it really seems that the world right now, like, just thinking about this, like, I always think when I was in New York City, a bit, I think I was near the Empire State Building. They usually have these clocks around telling what time it is around the world, from Paris, London, New York. You might see these a lot. But always you always see a clock that might say Tokyo on it, which ironically is the only non-white place that they're talking about. Everyone has a foundational white. People are in Paris, people are in Berlin, but white people in Tokyo. What does that mean? And I mean, we could be talking about parts of China, but I think just changing up the topic a bit, Tokyo has pretty much became white people's favorite non-white place that accepts whites. It probably has something to do with Japanese people and Japanese history being okay and interested with white people. But again, I think white people would like places like China you're talking about, or places in Korea, like on the wall of Empire State Building, like a clock.
No. Sorry, have to disagree with you. Japan and Japanese people are far more welcoming towards white people. But no, I wouldn't say Korea or China can be.
That's what I'm
compared.
saying.
And I can go deep on each country, by the way, and the mentality of each country individually. And I got to say, no, if you go search what it's like being a white or a black person in Korea,
that's what I was exactly trying to conclude, saying that white people are on this verge of they chose Tokyo, but how many policies are they going to try to make South Korea or China into? It just and that's why I'm pretty sure the Chinese people don't want white people in certain areas, is because it ruined their culture, ruined their heritage, and they know white people act like the globalist oxen that jumps around and wants to spread its and ironically some people say it's has something to do with Jewish globalism or something like that, but I feel there is this nature of white people being too universal and thinking everyone's white like themselves, and other non-whites catch on to this, and it's a very weird thing that white people don't question about themselves. But yeah.
Well, you touch on another great topic there. It's really about how powerful your country is and how much money you have and what your country and your money says about you. So, for instance, I know there's been the stereotype, although recently, the last, say, 10, 15 years, maybe longer, Americans have been far more careful when they're traveling. They're not loudmouths and that, but 50 years ago, they had a strong reputation as the people, and the British as well, traveling with their money and feeling like they own the place. Are you aware of this?
I'm pretty sure that that's exactly what I've been trying to say. I mean, people like that, so.
Yeah, well, right now, that's what Chinese people are doing. If you go throughout Australia, or you catch a bus or a train or go into a shop, the people yelling and bossing the people working behind the counter, or the barista, or going into the shop, the people yelling and screaming and bullying people around the streets are the Chinese. And I'm way ahead of it because I'm seeing it on the ground now. But very soon the Chinese will get the same reputation that the Americans have. Very soon. Because it's become very apparent to me that the Chinese walk around here like they own the place the same way that the Americans and the British used to. And that has nothing to do with the color of your skin. Mm-hmm. That has everything to do with the amount of money you have. And when you know that your country is a superpower and they have a military and they're privileged to have me in your country, they're privileged to have me walk through your country.
It's not only that, it's also like the Chinese women go after the white men, and maybe some Chinese men after white women, but I do feel I've been in some relationships where it's obviously a Chinese woman is using a white guy as a form of social status to signal to other girls, the same way a man would get a Japanese woman. So,
where did that happen?
Well, I've actually been in a relationship like that, but I see it sometimes, and again, I could use the example of Vancouver, but some of the fresh off the boat Chinese women will go date white men because it's socially in America because it's socially powerful thing.
Yeah. You're talking about in America where they're under the rule of America. It's the power is in America, so the Asian women would feel that this is the dominating class here, so therefore I should fall in line. But in fact, in other areas where the Chinese rule these countries, the local women fall in line and they feel like, oh, I need to date or marry a Chinese man because their military is so powerful. He's got all the money, he's got all the status within this country, even though it's not his country. And I'm starting to see that happening in Australia. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with who has the power. That's the way I see what is happening. So when someone says things like that, also, by the way, you did mention a white guy dating a Japanese girl. Well, that's frowned upon.
Well, because Japan's so close to Australia, I thought it would be acceptable. I don't know.
Hell no, dude. If I was to put videos up of me dating Asian girls, I mean, dude, I don't know. Have you heard of a guy called David Bond?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, search up David Bond. He wanted to do this type of video with me in the early days. He has been paraded. What he does is he teaches men on how to pick up girls. But what he's done is he's American, by the way. He spent most of his time in he was in Japan for a little bit, but most of the third world Asian countries, and he'd put the videos up on YouTube.
Oh, never mind. Actually, I was actually talking to him yesterday on Discord, so I just actually met him the other day. I'm sorry, because I'm like, David Bond. Oh, I was checking out his stuff yesterday, so we were actually in contact, so that's interesting, but...
He's been on the media. He's been throughout Asian media, and so you had a proper conversation, or just like
just a quick chat. Again, I met him like yesterday, or talked on the internet yesterday with him, and he was in my Discord, and we were talking. I was checking out his YouTube channel very quickly, but that's interesting. It's the same picking up the game thing. It's a very feminists don't like that. You pick up girls, and it's this kind of course, but I don't think there's anything wrong with men pursuing women, or even that matter. It's all about relationships, really. I don't think there's any exploitive nature. I think the most exploitive thing, if I can use this metaphor, allegory, the reason why the Chinese yell around in Australia, I think Australian are, they come from white people, and white people have definitely created a form of trust in society, and in Chinese culture, they don't have that same value of Western trust. And so if I put it like this, if you're like in a subway and some homeless man begs for the money and says, oh, I need money for my broken leg, or I have cancer, I'm going to die next day, and a white person gives into that, or then there's someone, you're in the subway and a thief whacks you across the head and steals your wallet. The thing is, the latter, about the thief whacking you across the head and stealing your wallet, doesn't undermine civilization. It's the homeless guy that's asking for your money undermines, because he's using your trust, and you're falling into that. So when white people look at Chinese as like themselves, and this has something to do with trust, they think we're so good they're going to do their vows, but no. Chinese know how to exploit this trust. It's not affirmative like the man who whacks you across the head and steals your wallet. It's more based upon saying stuff, and the politics are like that. And that's how I look about it. And it's the same way. It's people are very different, and it's just people don't understand basic concepts of race, pretty much.
You mean like the white people are more likely to understand that they can't discriminate against other people?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much it's a hyper conscious thing, right? White people think they're so hyper conscious they have to believe in white privilege and hate themselves, but in return they don't understand that itself, they're not being conscious about that conscious action. They're not thinking about thinking. And so they fall under this stupid and get exploited and just go with the flow, because most people are sheep, and so it's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yes, in your very well articulated way, yes, I totally agree. Totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. But the thing is, like for instance, if a Chinese person was in Australia and they were to go into a hotel and the hotel says, no, sorry, only white Australians are allowed to use this hotel, or you're only or they go into a nightclub or a cafe, and they were told that they were supposed to leave, the Chinese people would be like, wow, racism, put it up on the news, and then the white people would put that up on the news. Whereas when I was in China, I wasn't allowed in certain areas. There were certain, of course, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's certain hotels which are only Chinese. Oh gee, hang on, I've got to put this thing on silent. Sorry about that. You're aware of that? There's only Chinese areas?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. I mean,
yeah. Like I entered a hotel accidentally once, and I was abused and told to get out, and I was like, what's going on? He said, no white people in this hotel.
Yep.
And but if that was to happen in reverse in Australia, you know, the person that said that would probably be like, their face would be printed all over the media. There's a massive double standard, and
Exactly.
I see it every day. I see it every day.
It's like trust being manipulated and white people believing everything's universal. And that's exactly, if only people were more racially consciousness and had their own, put boundaries and told the Chinese to stop calling them racist, then they would understand. But people enable the behavior of racism, and then it happens.
Yes.
It's that simple.
Thank God I met you. You're probably the only intelligent person that doesn't live here who actually can see this, because God, thank you for actually seeing what I have to deal with every day. I am a little bit skewed because I get all the hatred online, and I see the double standard online as well as in day-to-day life. I'm a little bit more heightenedly aware of it. And thank God my girlfriend, she's a scientist. She's a very intelligent girl. She's always calling me out when I go too far. When I'm like, hey, she's like, but what about this? This isn't this isn't a fair experiment, is it? So I have an intelligent person to keep me, you know, aware, because sometimes you get stuck in your head. Like a lot of the Asian men living in America, they're so unaware, you know, they get stuck in this train of thinking. One of them made a response video to one of my videos, which I did deliberately to troll everybody, actually. This is 2 videos I made deliberately to troll people. I'll send you a link to his response. He rants for half an hour about how hard it is being an Asian man living in America, and I do feel sorry for him. I do understand what it would be like to be to an extent, what it would be like to be an Asian guy living in America, because I've read the comments. I've had the Skype chats with hundreds of Asian guys living in Western countries, not just America, in Europe as well. And but I'll link you this guy's video response. It was
interesting. I have to say one thing about this whole, I don't like to get caught up in the whole SJW or the whole, oh, my life's so bad stuff, because one, white liberals fall for that. And then white liberals like to, you know, uphold or uplift the values of the oppressed or the queer person and try to make them the hero. You see this a lot now with superhero films. You know, Miss Marvel is now Muslim, and you know, Black Panther, and you know, you have a queer trans hero. And I don't like to get caught in that lingo. And as we were talking about the hatred of, you know, white male, Asian female, part of my project, what I try to do on Asian Aryanism, is assume that, especially with the silly genetic argument, is again to assume that, okay, if white male, Asian female is pretty much the devil and satanic, and they make satanic children, then you might as well be hated and based upon hate core, be like punk rock people. And, you know, they'll continue to evaluate the Asian male, white female as the just, responsible, beautiful thing. But what's going to be ultimately hated? White male, Asian female. So you might as well just live up with the term and be like hated. But again, that's just a punk rock image I put along, and I don't discriminate with Asian male, white female. In fact, I think there should be bonds between white male, Asian female, and Asian male, white female. And I don't like, both parties should agree and accept one another as a trade. And I don't want to play this one-sidedness, because I really believe biculturalism is the acceptance of two people. But yeah.
In Australia, the immigrant parents tell Asian women not to date white guys. It is very common. It's a massive plague amongst Australian people. Um, I've been told it many times. I've read it in the comments. I've been told. I've also done interviews where I've interviewed Asian girls and said, "Hey, have you been shamed for dating a white guy?" Um, I did that interview as well, and I created Asian girl shaming on the as a term in the Urban Dictionary.
Ah.
um, yeah, it's very common in Australia to be shamed. If a white guy's dating an Asian girl, but it's not just the Asian immigrants that are shaming it. It's majority of white people shame it as well in Australia. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not. None of this. Yeah.
Well, it is very common to say, "Look, oh, why are you dating an Asian girl? Can't you get a white girl?" This is a very common thing in Australia, and so um,
In the American context, it's like, well, normal Chads and Stacys go with normal whites, and the intellectual, nice, white guy is going with Asian girls. This is especially in the upper classes, and it's considered a norm because it passes the multicultural thing, and they're white under standards. And it just turns out the middle class white people just go with white on white, but it's the upper class whites because the normal white girls don't want to accept the normal white intellectual guy because he's not alpha or strong enough, and she is a whore, basically this violent creature. And so whites in America are going for Asian is because it's the only natural, normal thing to do, and because these Asian girls are also Americanized as well. So it's a different situation.
yeah, that's a different situation. I've seen people that from America come here, but it's very rare. We're not really influenced by America anymore down in Australia. Is this a Mark Zuckerberg thing?
I think Mark Zuckerberg is definitely a part of the upper elite, and he had thousands of women to choose from, but chose an Asian, and that's exactly the same mentality as most people with a STEM degree would do, or just sensitive guys, right? They would rather go with a wife who's caring, who wants to be, a mother, look after the household. White women in America don't do that anymore. They're too busy trying to hunt down the alpha and looking for promiscuous sex. The most honest guys go with Asians and they stick to life, and that's pretty much most of my friends, and a cultural thing that's happening. But the problem is there's too many white men in America that have this very cucked-minded liberal mentality of there's no such thing as race, or everyone's racially egalitarian, and they don't want to have a destiny for their children. They don't want to claim, yeah, my child's Eurasian. They want to say, no, he's a universal being, and he can marry whoever he wants to. But the truth is he's going to end up with white or Asian. And it's a disease of white people. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to yellow pill people and assume that you do have a destiny, and you have a destiny of Euro Asian people, and you got to look out for Euro Asian people, and you got to look out for one another. So,
What's yellow pill mean?
It's a joke. It's like red pill, blue pill. People say they get red pilled and they think about the realities of race, and I say yellow pilled as a way of being, well, everything's going to shit. If you want a normal life, you should just assimilate with Asian Americans, and Asian Americans assimilate white and create a new white race or a new white Asian race on the side. And it's the yellow pill process. You realize that half your culture is also anime and whatever, and interesting Asian thing, and you synergize it. That's basically what it is. It's a joke on red pill. So,
okay, all right. How did you discover this whole white man, Asian female phenomenon?
Since I was 18, since I was 19, it was there right in front of me. But as doing other things, being an eccentric artist, like I was into like lowbrow art, pop surrealism, and at a young age I was also a musician. I realized in the upper classes there was this Asian thing, but being a teenager, I didn't have any thoughts about race. I was just like any other liberal. I had to be anti-white and this and that. Wasn't until I got into college I saw it even more. I tried to deny it, tried to say no. After more education, then going to Asian studies when I was like 21, you know, seeing that more happen, and it just at first in my mind, and then dating Asian girls, you know, and then dating other and comparing the two. As I get older, I started to realize that I'm not the only one that has lived this narrative, and that there's this bigger thing going on, a part of the millennial generation and further. And so I decided that, you know, after graduating college, I needed to express an art project that with people like who I like and things I saw. And I thought the Asian Aryan Project, you know, almost being a year old now, is pretty much, you know, my creation of music and art and blogging and writing and just going from there. And I've just got a lot of positive stuff from it. And I wish to continue to further the brand because I think it's a truth that I've seen and other people have seen. It's all about now just people agreeing that this truth exists. You know, it was only 10, 5, even 20 years ago that when this was developing in America, nobody questioned it. Nobody had the words and meanings. And I think it's time to develop words and meanings about this bicultural thing that is happening. So yeah, that's and now and this is what I do. I, you know, go on the internet and just talk to like-minded people. So yeah.
I guess the biggest problem with this is that it seems to be universally accepted to be AMWF, and AM
Lawful,
like
unlawful, I say. The
huh?
liberal the liberal world likes Asian male, white female, but hates anything to do with white men, so they'll have to attack it. And that's exactly where I take in the alt-right lingo and the alt-right anti-liberal philosophy in order to combat it in the punk rock image. You know, most hardcore punk rockers are anti-liberal, and you got to use that image and you got to embrace that culture in order to combat it, because the future, I'm optimistic, will be anti-liberal and ethno-nationalist, and people have to carve borders and be with people like themselves, including biracial people. It's not going to be this brown multicultural world of mixing pot, because then you destroy the natural human biodiversity of the world. You got to have it's a war against globalism. People are finding their roots. It's a reactionary thing. So yeah, I do see that struggle right there of trying to change values.
I've seen I've spoken to a lot of Americans about what's it like being a black man living in America, and how common is it that black men date white women? Is that very common in America?
What happens is that the highest divorce rate is black male, white female, and it's for obvious reasons. What happens is black men, you know, they're in the college scene on a scholarship, and then there's that white liberal or that white Stacy who's like, "You're black." It's that macho black guy into rap, and the white Stacy's like, "Yeah, he looks fun, whatever." They might have sex, they might do whatever, but then he leaves because it's like, "Well, I already tried my snow bunny." Or you get this rare example of this intellectual black guy with this white liberal who's like, "This guy is different because he's a different race, but I really like him because he's sensitive and soft," and it's a part of the white liberal disease what white women think and fall for. And again, it's high divorce rate. Most mulatto kids are ironically done by white male, black female, because it's the lowest divorce rate. I'm taking these statistics from the Pew Research Center of interracial relationships of 2015, but white male,
Okay.
black female produce mulatto children, you know, half, you know, Oreo kids. Now, ironically, for a long time that these kids were supposed to be like white black people, like Oreos, white on the inside, black on the outside, and it's just to act like white people with black skin. That didn't work out because the media suggested that they should be more black, and the creation of Black Lives Matter has a lot to do with the Gen X generation, you know, having children with black women and having white black children that they're smart enough, but at the same time uses this liberal anti-white rhetoric to control a Black Lives Matter movement. I think the higher-ups, I know for a fact the higher-ups of all Black Lives Matter are mixed white-black people, really. So it's an unfortunate ties of events. It shows you that Oreo, white black people want to be considered black. They don't want to be considered a third mulatto force. They want to be black. It's either the amnesty argument. It's either you're white or you're black. You can't be a third position, and that's a shame. And I think that's why a lot of white people today are avoiding to have black wives, is because if they have mulatto children, they're going to be black and they're going to disrespect all their white ancestry, even though they might have white blood in them. I knew a black girl who had.
Is that true though? Like, is that amongst all of them, or is that just a
Some of them.
generalization?
There is this very small percentage of black women and black men that want to be white, that really do, but they don't have the words and means to say it. They'll be called an Uncle Tom, a self-hating black person, whatever. There is no
Okay, so
force.
so what you're saying there is how can I put it? You're almost to an extent generalizing. Keep in mind, I don't know anything about this. I'm living on the other side of the world, okay? But I'm trying to associate the narrative that you're talking about right now in the white man, Asian female, kind of trying to see that there's similarities there. And maybe to an extent you're not aware that you're generalizing against black men in the same way that I'm getting generalized as a white man. Do you know what
Well,
I'm trying to say here?
well, I would be for an institution of bicultural, mulatto people, but that is really up to someone else who has interest in that. And
Mm.
again, I always talk. Somebody says, what are you going to do with Afro-Asian people, with Black Asian people?" And I said, "Well, somebody's got to do an Afro-Asian program, something like that." And it turns out Afro-Asians go with Southeast Asians because of their darker skin, and whatever you want to make an all Americana, then that's
Well,
officially
actually,
multicultural and multiracial. But yeah.
actually, Southeast Asians genetically, by being told by people from Southeast Asia, they tell me that they are genetically African descent. So apparently, they came from Africa in the early days,
Yeah,
thousands of years.
and that's
So,
exactly would make an opportunity for Afro-Asians to happen. But for the
mm,
generalization thing, it's just a really bad force in America for white versus black. It's a really bad
mm,
situation, and whites and blacks are pretty much segregated at this point in America. Uh, Nobody talks to one another. It's pretty much reverted back to the
really?
classic coloreds only. Yeah, that's pretty much 2017 in America. It's reverted back to that. And it's the project of assimilation of creating a mulatto race has failed because blacks want to be black nationalists. But at the same time, they want free stuff from white people. They want gives me that. And white people are falling for it. And there's these arguments that if blacks don't get the gives me that, they will suffer and die, and they will create pretty much an Africa and America. And that's pretty much what's happened with the riots. So it's really a bad racial situation, and I can only say more racial turmoil will happen, and they definitely have to segregate and create more segregated communities, and that's actually what's been happening. There are redeemable black people that would like to be a part of America, but that includes them getting into white culture, a culture that, or understanding that background. And that requires some form of intellect and rigor, and it requires certain sacrifices. I mean, not all black people can be like Tom Sowell. So yeah, that's my issue on the whole white black thing. It's a very touchy and edgy issue.
The the way that you said, yeah, they want free stuff from white people, and uh, the way you mentioned them, many of those times over and over again, I felt this. Um, it's almost like what it would be like as a white person living in Asia.
Mm.
Are you seeing similarities here? And like, I'm not trying to call you out or anything like that. Maybe you're unaware of it and you're living in a different environment than I am. But from the outside looking in, as Australia starts to become an Asian country, I am going to be seen as that black guy looking for free shit.
Yeah, because you're being kicked
You
out
know
of
what
your
I'm?
own. You're being kicked out of your own home country. It should be the right of Australian people to control it and make them the majority. I think a better
Mm,
example would be the whites going to Japan and then asking the Japanese, "I want to do this. I want to be in this Japanese society." It's like, the Japanese have a full right to go and kick and say, no, you're ruining our traditions, and people, we know you just want to create a white Asian Aryan topic country somewhere. But again, it's really all about the people's not being cucked, right? The Japanese, I hope the Japanese don't get cucked in order by mega forces, because otherwise bicultural people will happen, and then you have more problems. So I guess but I know what you're saying on that behalf. It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate event that you would have to go through that, and it all requires.
Aren't aware. We are, to an extent, we aren't aware of our own generalizations sometimes and the way we see other people. See, like, so Asian men can complain about me, and to an extent, if I was in your situation, like hearing the way that you were talking about the black guys over there as well, this is something universal, you know. Do you know what I'm trying to? I just identified within you is something which I'm identifying within Asian men.
Yeah.
The way that they treat me, and it's a trickle down effect. So the future, I guess, listening to the way that you and I've done a little bit of research. I can't say I know that much about being a black person in America. There's too much going on over here for me to really get deep in there, but just hearing the way you were talking there, it seems like when Australia has a Chinese prime minister, the police is run by Chinese or Asian people. I feel like I will be that white person looking for a free ride, and there'll be the relationships won't last long. There'll be a higher divorce rate, and I think it's between a white guy and an Asian girl. That's what I'm saying. Similar to what it's like being a black man in America, from what you just said too, by the way. I don't know a lot about it, but I can, and I guess socioeconomic status and the way that women often would rather go with someone who is from a higher status, and often driven, someone who is driven and hardworking and is willing to put in the hard yards to become the best man that they can be. I guess what America, this is probably right out of left field, but I feel like the way black men in America feel today is the future of white men in Australia.
I mean, it's a very weird situation, but
race has nothing to do with it, by the way. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do.
It's an interesting way of putting it that way. It definitely has a interesting thing about, but I hope things are not that. I'm an optimist, and I hope things get better and people heal stuff and people have their own self-determination and interest on that. But I'm gonna end the conversation here because we're at the 70-minute marker. So I'll just close. Yeah, I'll just close the conversation because I know we got a lot done. So
damn, that went fast. I thought we were talking for 5 minutes. Wow.